Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a June 29th edition of the MSP Initiative Live, or we like to call it MSP Talk. Hopefully everybody has been having a wonderful week. We are freshly back from Dublin. We'll talk a little bit about what happened in Dublin this past week. But before we get too far down the line, we like to do a little bit of housekeeping at the beginning of all these sessions. So that way, you know what we're up to and you know how to keep up with the fun stuff. Here we go. MSPinitiative.com. This session and every other session we've ever recorded here in video and audio format. So choose the one that fits you best. We have an event coming up in August, which is called MSP Community Minds, August 14th and 15th. So it's in Denver. We'd really love for you to join us. As an MSP, is 100% free to register. We are bringing 2 days full of content with a bunch of community speakers and MSPs. So we're going to have panels. We're going to have workshops. Starting to really populate all of the agenda items here. And here is where we're staying. But ultimately, we'd really like this to be a completely educational give back to the MSP community. Topics from lead gen and marketing and M&A and security, and it's going to be a lot of good stuff with a lot of good people. So we flipped the bus tour into this model. We really hope people, love the air conditioning, but definitely if you can, mark these 2 dates off, register for free, join us in Denver and learn. This past week in Dublin, we completed the MSP Community Block Party in Dublin. That actually completes the trifecta of European block parties this year. We had London, we had Prague, and now we had Dublin. We'll be posting photos and videos of this event coming up soon. It was absolutely awesome. We're going to be doing it again next year because apparently this conference will be returning to Dublin as well, that we did the party around. So that was DattoCon. So here are the remaining block parties for 2023. We have the MSP Community Boat Party. This is done in conjunction with our friends from Taylor Business Group and the big conference, which we're going to talk about on this podcast today. We did this last year, ended up really well. Pictures are online if you don't believe me. I can't wait to do it again. Then we're going to be going to Miami, and we're going to be doing the U.S. side of that con. So stay tuned for that. And then lastly, we'll be going to Orlando. And last year we did the All-American Rejects. That's right, the one you hear on the radio for the last decade. So these are the remaining block parties of the year. We're excited. We hope you are too. We do these for you to give you something cool and memorable. So please put these in your calendar. And if you didn't like Florida, obviously you will after these three, hopefully. Check out MSP Community Offers, a couple companies from around the industry giving us promos for you. And lastly, our industry calendar, which is us just collecting all of the events happening from around the industry and putting them in one place so that we all know what's going on. And so you can actually keep up with what's happening between now and the end of the year. And then in January, we reset and post them all again and figure out who's doing what. So feel free to jump into here or if we're missing any, submit them and we will try and get them on there. So that is all of the happenings at MSP Initiative. So obviously you can see lots of things going on. While his camera may not be working, today we bring on a familiar name, Dennis O'Connell. Love that last name since I've been in Dublin for the last 4 or 5 days or 3 or 4 days from Taylor Business Group. How you doing today, Dennis?
George, I'm excited. I got on my nice Taylor shirt. I'm all prepped. I'm ready to go, and no video. So
okay. Man, technology's great when it works. But we're happy to go radio show style today and learn a little bit. So before we get too deep into the mix, so Dennis has been on before, as well as some other people from Taylor Business Group, like our friend Ken Patterson. So previous recordings of those sessions are on mspinitiative.com under sessions. But what we definitely are excited for, and if I know I've mentioned it as we've been going along, but Dennis, let's talk about Taylor Business Group, big conference. Like for people who don't even know what it is, let's learn a little bit about what to look forward to here.
Big conference is put on by our members for our members. It is a gathering of 2.5 days of really good content. We have a number of sessions in the mornings on early on. We have some keynote speakers, and we have some of our partners get up on main stage. And then in the afternoon breakout sessions, they are all controlled and determined by our members. So we will post the full agenda, hopefully up by next week, with some really nice. It's really good. Like to announce that we have just announced that we will have John Hillen as our primary keynote speaker. I don't know if you know John Hillen.
No, I don't. Let's hear about him.
He and John Nevins wrote the book, What Happens Now? Reinvent yourself as a leader before your business outruns you. So we'll
Sounds like a good topic.
It is a wonderful topic. So we're excited to have him there. We will also have autographed copies of the book for you to be able to take home. If you're a Amazon Prime person, it's the book is free for Audible right now. At least it was for me, half hour ago. So, you have the opportunity to listen to it and come prepared. We also, we have a really interesting, yet to be announced security experts that we're looking to come down and help. As usual, we have our CISO forum, Chief Information Security Officer forum. So we will have folks from Huntress, ThreatLocker, Security Granted, and Gradient MSP, along with hopefully a special guest and a special moderator. We should have that all wrapped up by next week. And then we have a former member doing a keynote on Saturday. He grew his MSP and actually got the largest multiple of anybody that's ever left Taylor Business Group.
Wow. Well, that's a good story, you think?
Yeah. And he's going to talk about how he included projects as part of MRR, unlimited projects as part of MRR. And most people, when you tell them that, most MSP owners, they cringe. They start to shake. They quake in their boots. And so he's going to come down and share the secret sauce of how he did that, what his all-in pricing was on a per seat basis, and then how that drove the largest multiple any Taylor Business Group owner has ever received. So we're excited to have that, have him as a keynote, and we so it will be a lot of fun. Let me tell you about a couple other fun things we're going to be doing. Okay. We have this thing that some company, MSP Initiative is doing for us, right? Last year, George rented a boat. It was a 5-story boat, and we kicked off big on Wednesday night, going up the Intracoastal Waterway and back down. And I'll tell you, everybody walked away from that. It was just super classy. George, you had one level he had one level for cocktails, and there was next level was for you had some food, and then the next level was desserts, and then the top level was open. You had a DJ, and it was an absolutely gorgeous night.
I love how we separate floors by food. That's good.
Yeah. and if you're physically challenged, which my wife is can walk, but she's not far, so she's in a wheelchair. The boat has an elevator.
I was surprised. I didn't know that, actually. That was cool.
Yeah, and so they saw that she needed help and couldn't do the steps, and it was probably some of the best concierge service that we had gotten.
I will say that it was one of the few events in Florida that we've done in the last 12 months where we did not have to enact a rain plan. Somehow, some way, the weather just sliced to make that work. And I was like, obviously, fast forward to November in Orlando, didn't quite work out that way. But hey,
yeah,
take a win where I can get it.
Yeah, we have on Wednesday. If you're an MSP owner, you don't have to be a member of Taylor Business Group to come. Right. We'd love to have you come experience our community, talk with our members, understand what it's like, and figure out why you want to become a partner. We do have the ability for you to bring along your service manager at no cost for registration. We're doing a special service leaders forum on Wednesday. So and it's dedicated, the whole day is dedicated to just being a service manager. And then throughout the course of the event, we will also have, hey, can I go there? That looks like a cool place.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty cool, I mean, this Diplomat Resort is pretty neat. It's definitely bringing the family vacation spot for sure.
Yep. And speaking of families, on Friday, over the lunch hour, if you have a significant other, we are doing a lunch, a much smaller boat designed for about 40 people. We'll go up and down the intercoastal during the daytime over lunch. So, your significant other can participate. But it's really, what's so cool about this is I'd say probably a third of the people had their families with them this year or last year.
Oh yeah, this property is really nice. I think this is the second. Are you doing this next year there too? I know I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
So it's the second of 3 years. No, this was great. Right on the beach, and of course, if the weather cooperates, which you hope with Florida it does. This is one where you bring a couple other people in the family and you make it a thing. That's my opinion, but definitely good for work stuff, good for non-work stuff. If you this is a Wednesday, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning.
Cool. And you just stay the weekend, right? And just make it a thing. So
you can get the discounted hotel rate starting the Sunday before.
There you go.
Spend a whole week, spend a few days with us, spend a few days with your family, and just make it a wonderful time.
Yeah, that's exciting. The good news here is, and again, Dennis already said it, but you don't have to be a member of Taylor Business Group, which is a peer and accountability group, by the way, guys. If you're not in one, take a look. I'm sure you've heard of other people doing peer groups, even if it's not this one, right? It helps keep people accountable. It helps you download from other people's brains what works, what doesn't work, and tries to help you understand where you are in the thick of things and what your outcome could be. So that's why, it's actually, I'm even curious to hear what this magic, projects as a service thing is, because we had Reed Warren on, which I know works with you guys a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And he even mentioned that at one point, that could help how the math works out in the end and how you're valued. But no, it's a great event. No, honestly, right? Stopped by for my first one in Arizona 2 years ago.
Yep.
And then they moved to this Diplomat Resort in Florida, which is nice. And smart people, they're intelligent, they know their stuff. People who really understand their businesses, right? And the numbers are part of that. But also some just good industry stuff to learn, right? It's not just all about what you guys are doing. You bring in some outside stuff too.
So can I tell you an interesting story, George, about...
Go for it, Dennis.
So what goes around comes around, and it's really kind of funny. So in 2021, one of our members had a breakout session where he talked about how he was using resources over in the Philippines and how he had grown so it was his secret sauce. and he had grown his Philippine staff from 1 to about 60. So, and how he had done it, all the ways he had leveraged, what it meant to his bottom line, all that kind of good stuff. Fast forward to February of this year, we had 2 groups that met together, and 3 people that had sat in that session were leading a session on how they had grown their staff in the Philippines from 1 to, one guy had 3, one guy had 5, and I think the other guy had 4. So they sat in the session, they learned, they implemented it, and now they were teaching the next generation of people. So it had come full circle, right? Of how great ideas can move through the ecosystem, through the community, because people were willing to share what was good and successful for them. And George, there are a lot of MSPs in the world.
And depending on who you talk to, it could be 70,000 or it could be 150,000. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that number is, but that's still a lot of companies.
Yeah. And our members look at it as they don't, even though our groups don't have competitors in them, when you get down to like the event like this, when people are sharing what works for them, their philosophy is, I'm running my business well. I'm doing well. I can compete in my market. And yes, if you're in your market, I'd love to compete with you. But in reality, in my market, there's 100, 150 MSPs, right? And our members very rarely come across each other, right? Because you take somebody in New York City, they may have a financial focus, or they may have a real estate focus. You can, in some of the bigger cities where we have more of our members, people are in different verticals. So even though they're an MSP, they would never really compete, because if you're doing lawyers, they're an interesting breed, but if you're doing them well, right, you're going to get a lot of them. And so then why go outside and try to understand real estate, right? So sharing is that's really what it's about. And
I talk about all the time about learning the hard way or learning from somebody else that's already done the hard way. I've talked about castle mentality. Everybody thinks you're my competitor. And it's like, really, are they? There's a lot of business out there. And I do not subscribe, Dennis. I don't know if you do, but I do not subscribe to the concept that anybody that needs an MSP already has an MSP. And the only way that you're growing your business is by, winning business over from another MSP. Yeah, that happens, but I don't believe largely that's how net new companies sign up for MSP services. I really don't.
I agree with you there.
Yeah, I think it's largely exaggerated. And quite frankly, with the number of net new businesses that start every year, there's a lot of business out there. And I think the whole commoditization of IT, there's a little bit of truth to that, but I think there's more truth to hey, somebody might start small, but even if they go and subscribe to every SaaS solution on the planet, it gets to the point where they can't manage it anyway, right? Remember, we're shooting for outcomes, right? Technology is just a tool to get there. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of parts of technology as tools, but yeah, generally speaking, I largely, I can't stress enough. There's such a low percentage of people in the technology services business that never, it could be that they're actually in their business and they don't have time to get away, but just the amount of information you can learn by talking to somebody else that's already doing this, it's invaluable. It's hard to put a number to it because there's just so much that you can learn from just a couple of days talking with other people that are in the trench like you. But there is a maturity level difference between company A, B, and C, right? Like not everybody's at the same level. And it's sometimes better to learn how to get to the next stage, how to get past a certain dollar amount, how to get past a certain employee head count from somebody that's already gotten there. And you can read books all you want, but I like to talk to people.
Right.
I do.
Yeah, I agree with you. The whole ability to avoid mistakes At least catastrophic.
Expensive and time-consuming mistakes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. So George, I think that, when we're talking about business improvement groups and peer groups, one of the biggest hurdles I always hear is I don't have the time. And I don't know if you hear that also. But
I hear this as the reasoning for a lot of things, Dennis. Hey, I never got there. I never looked into it. I didn't have time to implement it. I never configured it and deployed it in my business. I never went back to my customers and asked them to make a change. I never modified my agreement. I never went back and raised my prices. Like, I could go on, right? And always the reasoning is time.
Yep. And
Well,
and
it does accumulate though, right?
Yep.
Like all these things that you didn't do because you didn't have time. Yeah. I mean, it could be a business changer.
Yeah. And we always tell people that I will give them back more time than they invest. And there's a couple obvious places that happens. When you need to explore a solution, right? You go to your peer group and you say, hey, I'm interested in this new security thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody in the peer group goes, man, I love it. It's the best thing since peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, George, right? You go, oh, okay. Well, guess what? You just saved yourself months of deep investigation. You just kind of go to the, hey, I'm going to try it stage,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's also the guy who says, oh, no, run as fast as you can and as far away as you can. And you know what? You just saved yourself, again, months, plus all the dollars you invested in trying to roll it out and make it happen. And 6-12 months down the road, you go, this was a time sink and a dollar sink.
Yeah.
Right. So, you get that. There's new ideas. I tell people go, but everybody's an MSP. I can tell, and I go, and I tell them that you are doing something unique that nobody else in that group is doing. And you're gonna get there, and you're gonna realize that somebody's doing something you never even thought of, right? Because you can't think of everything.
That's true. And not every MSP is configured the same way, and they're not using all the same practices, policies, procedures, bundles. But there's some clever people out there. I mean, domestically, internationally, right? I mean, that the technology business is a technology business, but like some people find new angles, and like I'm sure you've heard the idea, nothing's new under the sun, right? Sometimes there are unique ways to do things that, like, more brains are smarter than one brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that concept, by the way.
Yeah, we had. I was sitting in and listening to a meeting with a new member that went into an existing group, and he was talking. They were asking. He was doing his corporate presentation where he was in front of everybody, and they were all his board, his temporary board of directors, and they were asking him, what's your billing rate, and he told them, and it was 2/3 of what, maybe a half of what everybody else was. And initially they derided him. They got all over him until he went and explained how he did it. And they go, oh, because what he had done was set up an environment where he got about one ticket a month maximum per client. Right. So he automated so many things that he could charge less, and he was making a higher margin than them on a lower dollar.
One ticket a customer per month. How many customers did that guy have?
He had 40, 50 clients.
So he's doing 40 or 50 tickets a month. Is it just him?
No, he had 2 or 3 guys because he had a staff, but it was interesting how, originally they gave him a hard time for his price, but then when he explained it all, they all went, wow, I never thought of that. Every one of them had never thought of his pricing model. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, really? So.
No, that's good. I mean, Pete chimes in. He says, basically one of the key things that you got to have a peer group, other than accountability, is you can leverage the services of the other people in your groups as a stepping stone to staffing up, right? Like you may not be able to go straight to adding more headcount, but if you can leverage extra bandwidth in some of the people in your group, like you can do that safely, right?
Yep. Yes, you can. I'll give you a story. We have a member that's in Louisiana, and anybody who's ever followed hurricane season knows that hurricanes go up into Louisiana. And first year in the peer group, the hurricane was coming. The eye was going to hit him square on, and about a week ahead, he goes, "Oh yeah," you talk. They're chattering back and forth in the group. And as the week moved on and it got closer, and the eye it was a class 3, Cat 3 hurricane, so it was going to do some damage. About 3 days ahead of time, everybody in the group said, "Hey, if you need a person, I will free one up for as long as you need them." So he went from an 8-man tech shop to like a 17-man shop, right? If he needed it. Fortunately, the hurricane shifted 50 miles to the east, and so when you're on the west side of a hurricane, if that's the place you want to be, because you're not getting the way the winds turn. So he made it through, but he had available to him one tech from every member.
Wow.
To help him, right? Because they understand that the same type of thing could happen to them. So
that, by the way, still good people in the world, thank God.
Yes.
That's the first thought that came to my head.
Yeah.
Like, even if you hire somebody off the street, it still takes some time to understand the systems that you're working with, the technologies that you deploy. Like, you would hope that in a peer group model, a lot of people have adopted similar things because the group is like kind of, validating things collectively. Now they get this like, hey, we'll throw you a tech per company to help you kind of get through it. They're not learning on the go, right? They're not learning on the job. They probably already know most of the things that you're using. I mean, I don't know who has that insurance policy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool insurance policy.
That's really cool. The Philippines thing I know has been pretty popular, although it can go in a lot of different directions, good and bad.
Yeah.
So it would be really good to know the people who have figured it out and not have to reinvent and learn that wheel on your own from the beginning. What about you had so many stories, Dennis, because you live in it, but what have you, could you give us an example of a story where somebody, other than the hurricane, because that's a negative one, like, have you had any members go through a cyber situation or anything like that, and we're able to leverage some of the resources of the people in the groups, to get through it?
We don't have anybody. Well, we have one member that went through the Kasei event. But they didn't become a Taylor member until afterwards.
Okay.
So, he wasn't able to leverage that. I'm not aware of anybody else who has had a cyber event yet.
That's good.
Yeah,
Let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah,
I'm sure we learned from that guy who went to the Kasei event.
Yeah. It took a toll on him personally, and he had, I think he only lost 10% of his customers, which is
I guess in the relative thinking, right? Stop the bleeding, right? 10% doesn't sound like it's gonna put you out of business, but still 10% when you're working hard to add customers.
Yeah, and he's been due to the people he kept and stayed on with him have been huge referral sources for him. So he's back to where he was pre-event, because he did what's right for them, right? And again, that's, we as business owners, that's one of the things that you have to do all the time.
Yeah,
you got to do what's right for your clients.
I agree. And being in tough situations is part of business. We all know that. but handling situation, how you handle a situation, how you approach a situation could mean wildly different outcomes, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like a mentor mentee type thing, right? You can lean on someone else and say, hey, have you ever run into this before? How would you approach the situation? Because there might not be a rule book here to follow, right? Sometimes you're in a space you've never been in before, and I know everybody's unique. There's different personalities in the mix, but sometimes it's good to go and be able to ask advice from someone, right?
Yeah. That's one of the things we try to do is provide the opportunity for every member once a year to be in front of the group where they become the other members become their board of directors. Right. And I tell them when they're up there a couple of things. One, if you're not uncomfortable at some time during that presentation, you didn't push yourself. You either didn't ask the group the hard question that you need to have answered, or they didn't ask you the hard question because you didn't make it available for them to ask it. Right. So and then even when they ask you the hard question, you have to be open to it. Right. You gotta be you gotta be willing to listen and take the collective criticism and not realize that it's personal. They're trying to help you. Right. So
people are largely uncomfortable when they got to talk about hard things, right?
yeah.
And I know that's a human being thing. Some people live for the hard conversation. Some people run away from it. I live for the hard conversation. I don't know why. Doesn't bother me too much. But it's good to have them.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the hard conversation so that I can deal with the next harder conversation than hide from them all. And then, I don't want to have to always run to somebody else to fight my battles, but that's just me. I'm going to pivot real quick. So
Yeah.
went to Dublin this past 3, 4, 5 days. It was the DattoCon Dublin event. And if you haven't been to Dublin, it's nice to go there when it's supposed to be good weather, although it's a little bit Florida-ish. And it's, hey, it could be raining 1 second, like downpouring, and then next second it's like sunny, and you're like, just happened here. Okay. So interesting, but no, it was a good time. I think we had about 1,000 people there, which is pretty good for a European event. Some Americans came over, so good for them. And love when we're able to pull off these crazy, nighttime events, right? Block party style stuff. So as you can imagine, the Europeans like to drink a bit more than the Americans.
A wee bit.
Just
a wee bit.
Just a little bit more. But it was good times. And so I'm excited, if you create the environment where people can just have a conversation, right? Like informal conversation, I like to call it. Good things come from that, right? Kind of loosens people up, and then they kind of get into the good convos. So love those.
So George, what was because I'm really interested. One, I love the Guinness pictures, right? I'm sure you got your fair share. But what were like 1 or 2 of the key takeaways that you got from being over there?
Parts of Europe are a little I feel like years behind what we're doing now on this side, right? Like there's almost like a delay where, maybe they're 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years behind in how they're doing business, what they're doing as part of their day to day, how they structure things for their end customers. It's very ironic. It's very unique how that happens because the internet's still the internet, right? You think that that's largely available in a lot of places. So I was talking to several people from different countries in Europe, and everyone says that the Greece, Spain, the southern parts of Europe are kind of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We don't necessarily like new stuff. We adopt slow. Obviously, you got UK, Ireland, call them Nordic countries, right? like that, right on the other side, including Amsterdam and Norway and Finland, that kind of stuff. They're and Germany is another one, right, where it's like they're largely cloud adopters. They're drinking the Kool-Aid. They're following a lot of the things that we're doing over here from a business maturity and like practices standpoint. But I was talking to a ton of people over there, and like, we don't have to say their names, Dennis, but there's guys out there that are like, oh, you should be charging $1,000 a user, $1,500 a user, $2,500. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I would say, like, most people should be hopefully between $150 and $250 a user if they're billing that way.
Yeah.
Unless you disagree. Over there, they're still charging like 50 to 60 pounds or 50 to 70 euro per user. And I'm just really low. Even when you do the conversion, like you don't hear them doing 100, 150, 175, 200. And that's like really interesting to me, why the shift in pricing is like more than half what we're charging here.
Really?
Yeah. It's even the big ones, like the bigger shops and there's a lot of M&A happening over there too, where they're like 10,000 endpoints, 15,000 endpoints, 8,000 endpoints. And it's like, so, hey, what's your average? And they're like, yeah, 60, 65, 7. I'm like, what? And I'm just, that seems to be what the market price is. And like, I tried to drag out of them, like, is that just reoccurring labor? And are you separating out the rest of the products and services? And that's why it's not being combined as a single price point. Is it segregated out? And some of it is that way. And that's why their numbers are being quoted lower, but a lot of them no. And I'm like, so then the obvious question was, well, what's included? Like, what is
yeah.
And so like, it was, it's almost diner menu a play, right? Where they're like, hey, our base service is X. And like, you want to add this, and this. They're kind of billing them separately rather than bundling them into their base plan. And I don't want to say it's a race to the bottom, Dennis. A lot of people are charging less than that, believe it or not. And I ask myself, how is that possible? Because all the same companies we're working with here on the vendor side are there mostly, and they're not charging them half. It just doesn't happen. So
right.
It's just very interesting that the market will bear a much lower price point from a positioning, packaging, marketing standpoint. And there's still, and the more you go into Central Europe and like towards, Western Europe or Eastern Europe, I'm sorry, the reoccurring services model is still newer. It's not widely adopted. They're still on a pay for service, break fix project, some stuff reoccurring. So it does feel like they're a little bit behind, at least where we're at here on the US side.
And what about on the security side, George? I know security is so big over here, and people are, we have some really good people like ThreatLocker and Huntress and Solutions Granted and people like that who are really making a difference.
Yeah.
I
mean, by the way,
getting the same type of penetration. I mean, is security as focused and highlighted there?
It's definitely, they're there. Everybody that you just mentioned is there, except for Solutions Granted, like ThreatLocker, Huntress, Blackpoint.
Yeah. I didn't mean to leave people out,
They're absolutely all there. And like, it's definitely not hidden. It is definitely as focal there in the conversations, presentations, breakouts as they are here. I think it's a little bit, there's been a pushback on price point. I've heard it. I think a lot of people believe that based on what the market will bear, a lot of these security services are being viewed as maybe not affordable to the average company. But there's there's still a large presence of security conversation and solutions. And I mean, like, all the companies have a European office, like they're doing the same process. I will say that I've been going over to the UK, Ireland, like since about 2015, late 2015. There's a much slower adoption before MSPs and IT companies acquire new technologies there than there are here. Like, a lot of people go online, they do the research, they hit up a website, they say, show me the demo, or maybe there's a self-guided one, and then they buy, maybe after they kick the tires for a minute. Over there, it's a little bit old school. Like, they need to see you, they need to see you for a while, need to maybe have a few beers on a reoccurring basis with somebody from that company. And then, like, a lot of people tend not to be first, like the guinea pig guy, right? Like, they really want to go into a adopted, mature, like, they don't want to be the first one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that tends to be what happens over there. But surprisingly, and after I say everything I've just said, there are some really large MSPs over there, like millions and millions of dollar shop type companies, right? 10, 15, 20, 30. Surprising they have some mega MSPs, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. So yeah, interesting market. It really is. But they're transparent. They talk, get a few beers going. They absolutely talk. And they'll be honest with you. But in an almost polite way. Something we don't necessarily get on this side. So yeah, they're polite, but they're honest.
Yeah.
So, but they're good people. And you know what? Even if they're slightly behind where we're on the bleeding edge a little bit here in the States, and like they're kind of right behind us, especially in like UK, Ireland, and that kind of, right across Amsterdam, those areas, Germany. There's still some really clever people over there. Like, I've learned things from guys on the other side that I had never run into here. And like, they, sometimes it just takes somebody looking at a problem from a slightly different way. And like, most of the way that they run their businesses over there, it's like pretty much 90% apple for apple, right? Like, same problems, same challenges, same issues, same workflows. And like 8 to 10% is like that localization effect, right? Like something specific to their country, specific to their area. And by the way, like things that would not, like things that you would look at and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? Like, you wouldn't be mind blown about some of the localization stuff. So now they have their own regulations, right? There's the EU, kind of regulations. There's like the UK equivalent since, Brexit or whatever.
Right.
But they have, funny enough, they have maybe gone a little bit faster and a little bit further down the government heavy recommendations and or compliance stuff, where we keep on talking about it, but it hasn't quite really made it onto the books.
Like GDPR and stuff like that.
But just even in like, Cyber Essentials, Cyber 8, like they have a bunch of stuff over there like that are like, hey, these are things you need to do in order to comply, kind of thing. And by the way, all practical, reasonable things, like nothing that's like, oh, wow, I hope that never comes over here, right? Like, cyber hygiene type stuff, right? But basic stuff, right? That they've kind of implemented as baseline. And they're maybe further along with the insurance companies imposing certain restrictions and things that haven't necessarily shown up here yet, but are, seems like we're going in the same direction. So while the prices are lower, it seems, and the security's still a conversation, but like maybe not as fast an uptick there. Like, it seems like on the reverse, the government, kind of insurance industry pushback has already happened a little bit.
Interesting.
Weird. Yeah. A little bit of a weird dynamic, but smart people. remember, I think the UK has like 40 million-ish people. United States, I think it's 330-ish million. I say ish because things change, but still a large population in just that one country, right? And then the rest of Europe is obviously, varying grades, right? Coming across the channel there. So they don't have as many events, by the way, over there, Dennis. They're still, they're still all the events that kind of went away in the pandemic are largely, rolling out now, like kind of like what happened for us last year. But they still have pretty good, channel kind of presence. And, I like them. I do. Yeah. It's nice to learn from, different pools of thought. I think it just strikes up some things that we may not have on this side, even though the US has its own localization things too. So I know I went a little bit on a rant, but was super happy to, between London earlier in the year in March, Prague, which I'd never been to before, really loved it. I would definitely go back, especially when the weather's good. And Dublin, yeah, that was 3 pretty good sized representations of the European market for sure.
Nice. I'm glad you could share with us.
Yeah, and by the way, they all love Florida. So I do always mention all these crazy events that happen in Florida because we all joke about how like every other event's there anyway. And they always joke about Disney World. It always comes up. I don't know why.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you're over in Europe, you're still welcome to come to the Big.
There you go.
Right.
Well, I feel like Florida is heavily represented coming into the tail end of the year here, but hey, no, unless it's raining all week, which let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we've done the hurricane, George. We don't need to do it again.
Yeah, I try and forget it, but it tends to always come up somewhere. The rain plan, but no, the Big's gonna be good. Well, how many people are you expecting this year, Dennis?
We're expecting between 150 and 200 attendees.
Awesome.
We have.
And there's a good amount of vendor, support on the event as well.
Yeah, we have 30 sponsors. We don't want. I mean, we prefer to keep it to that level because we want it to be intimate. Our attendees are there. Most of our attendees are owners. So from a sponsor perspective, it's quantity versus quality sometimes.
Yeah. Quality versus quantity. Yeah, no, I got you. I mean, no offense, but we've all been to a lot of shows. I'm going to say hundreds at this point, but I guess it depends on how much you like to travel. If you have 100+ people with a stand or a booth or a table, whatever you want to call it, probably not getting to all of those, got to be honest. And yeah, I mean, like, everybody understands the game here, right? I hate to use me to say the word game, but it costs money to put these events on, let's be honest. And you want to get something out of it as a person who's leaving your office, your business for a couple of days, trying to gain value, right? On the other side of the equation has to be companies that are spending money to make the event happen and them making sure that there's something in it for them too, right? So there's a balancing point. But I agree with you, Dennis. Too much and gets to the point where it's feels like it's and hey, my personal opinion, Spirit Air, Frontier, those guys, right? It's like I don't want to have to pay to use the bathroom either. I don't want to be nickel and dime to do everything. So and that's a joke, by the way, because that's not the case. Even though I got fooled the first time I took a Frontier or Spirit flight, and somebody's like, "Did you get your quarters?" And I'm like, "I need quarters." I guess
that's so cool.
It happened. It totally did. I went and bought a back of gum, right? So I could get quarters. But yeah, that guy totally got me standing in line at Philly. But yeah, quality versus quantity. I tend to agree with you. I think some of the bigger events are just you'll never even get through those 150, whatever it is. It's just craziness.
So what else is on our mind today, George?
Other than just catching up on, the mountain of mailbox items, from being out for a few days. I'll give you this a funny on the way out the door, since we love to talk about travel, airports, and airport security.
Did you get it hammered again?
So, I think they stopped it in the UK, but in the US you can, or I'm sorry, in Ireland you can buy stuff and then get like the sales taxes refunded to you. So that was the first time I've ever done that, by the way, right? Where like their sales taxes, they call VAT. Like in Pennsylvania, it's 6%. In Dublin, it was 17%. And I was like, wow, it's a lot more. But if you're going home and you're not a citizen of Europe, they refund you those sales taxes. And so I was like, okay, cool. So over like, I guess this is, the process is like they give you the paperwork at the place you bought whatever you bought, and you fill it out. And then when you're going to the airport, there's like a stand that you go to, and like they basically are like, okay, and then they stamp everything, and they're like, all right, 6 weeks later you'll get it refunded to your credit card, kind of thing. And I was like, okay. So I went through that for the first time, and so before I even got there, I guess they finally adopted the newer technology where like you don't have to take your liquids out of your bag, you don't have to take your electronics out, like they just want to get you through. And I guess like the scanner's a little bit more, intelligent. So that was nice, by the way. You don't have to go old school, because some people just don't are not regular travelers, and that's always fun.
Yeah.
They did make you take off your belt. All right. So I thought, oh, that's odd. You did like the super expensive x-ray machine, and then like did that. The metal detector is old school. I don't know. But anyway, so I went through security. Didn't have a problem, thank God. That was nice. Went to go do the tax refund stand for the first time. So that was cool. And then in Dublin, and they have this now in several countries, like Canada definitely has it. They make you go through the US like customs border protection side in that country, so that when you fly back to the US, you're not going back through like international on the US side. It's just like a domestic flight.
Yeah.
So that's cool, by the way, because like makes total sense to do it ahead of time rather than the other side. I think whoever did that part was smart. Funny enough, I always complain about how like it's a 50-50 shot with global entry that it's even working when you come back into the US on, like to go past and like, hey, you came back from another country, blah, blah, blah. They ask you questions. So if you sign up for global entry, which by the way is like TSA pre-check, but 5 years instead of 3 years. So if you like, everybody gets, TSA pre-check, you can do it for longer, but then you get the international thing too, right? So it's combined. If so even if you're not doing international, it almost makes sense to just get pre-check for like, I think it's not that much more, but you get 5 years instead of 3. And then our machines actually worked, where a lot of times you come into the US, it's like the machine's busted and you have to like go through the normal process anyway. So that was pleasant, all right, to see that actually working. And other than the normal stuff that you get in any kind of traveling, like, hey, we're delayed, plane came in late, weather, blah, blah, blah. And like, by the way, the whole, hey, the wind behind us thing, for real, like on the way in from, from like East Coast into Dublin, it was like 5 hours, right? It wasn't like, like if you go from like Florida to California, something, it's 5 hours, right? East Coast to West Coast, 5 hours. On the way back, it was like almost 7 hours. It was like 6.5 hours, 7 hours.
Oh, because you got the headwinds.
Like 2 hours difference. Like, we largely don't see that here on this side. So
yeah,
well, I guess gotta do one extra movie on the entertainment, just to get through the flight. But all for all, yeah, that was new, right? Yeah. So if you ever go across to shop on the other side, you might be able to save a few bucks, and they refund you sales taxes. Who would have thought?
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had a good travel experience this time. That's always good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's not often, but I like to remember them when they do happen. Yeah, and I'll like, obviously I mentioned a lot more doesn't go well than does, so I digress. But all that being said, my friend, I am happy you're able to join, even though your camera's not working. Call tech support. You might have a few people. That
Yeah. Do you know anybody who knows how to do anything like
have,
this in the industry?
I don't know. I'm just kidding. Looking forward to the big. We're almost in July in like 2 days. So like in a month and a half, almost 2 months, we'll be in sunny Fort Lauderdale, hopefully, and we'll be enjoying the big. We'll be enjoying the MSP community boat tour and looking forward to the tail end of the year. But for everyone else, don't forget, we have the event in Denver a couple weeks earlier in August. So apparently August is like a full-blown month now, no vacation. But in all fairness, hope everybody's enjoying the upcoming summer holiday, which is already underway.
So it's Canada Day on Saturday.
Oh, that's right. Well, it's already a Saturday, so it's all good. But hey, just a reminder for all of those vacation goers, and I hope everybody gets their downtime. Sometimes bad things happen on vacations, as we know from a couple of years ago. So make sure that you're keeping one eyeball on all of your stuff and all of your customer systems so that you don't get caught flat-footed. And definitely don't look at holidays the same way after summer of 21, right? So that being said, looking forward to seeing you, Dennis. I'm sure I'll actually see you before the big conference. But for everyone else, check out, just Google Taylor Business Group, big. Hopefully, it sounds like the agenda will be online for next week. So, and the speakers. So awesome. And we recorded this session, so you can go back and hear, some of Dennis's stories and some of George talking about Europeans and how much they drink. And this was recorded, mspinitiative.com. We'll see you Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time, or on the road somewhere.
Thanks, George, for having me. You're awesome.
You got it, my friend. Appreciate you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.